Hi, everyone, and welcome to our noon session of the third day of the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs Annual Conference. So far, we have had 10 incredible sessions, and this one will be no different. We thank everyone who is on, and we thank our panelists who are on, who I think we've had this session at all of our conferences because it is so important, and we've seen such progress in our post-secondary education opportunities for our students with intellectual and developmental disabilities and autism. And so we have made that a priority to get this information out to the public, and the people that you're about to hear from have done incredible work in moving the needle forward for more opportunities for students across the state. Dr. Melanie Washington with the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs will be facilitating this panel, and I will turn it over to her now. Dr. Washington.
Well, good afternoon. It's so good to see everybody's face here again. We have a few new faces, I believe. So welcome to the session on post-secondary education programs for students with disabilities. My name is Melanie Washington, as Bambi mentioned, and I am a staff in the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs. I'll be moderating the session today. I was going to briefly introduce the speakers, but I think I'll let everybody just do a brief introduction just to say your name, the program that you're representing, well, the institution, and then the program that you're representing at that institution. But before we get started, I just want to let attendees know that this is going to be a question and answer panel discussion. So I'll be asking the questions. And but please feel free to send your questions in. If any of the panelists feel the need to answer the question as they see it come up, they can feel free to do so. Or we'll try to save some time at the end to make sure that we can address at least some of the questions. We have about 7 institutions represented here as soon as our last panelist joins us. And so we may not have a whole lot of time for extra questions, but please send them in as they come. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with introductions, and I will start with the first person I see on the screen, Dr. Caroline Jurisich.
Hello, excuse me. My name is Caroline Jurisich. I am from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and I am the director of the UL Life program there.
Welcome, Dr. Jurisich. And next we have Dr. Mary Breaud.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Mary Breaud. I am the faculty advisor for the Bridge to Independence program at Nichols State University, and also an associate professor in educational leadership at Nichols.
Welcome back, Dr. Breaud. And next we have Sue Killam.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sue Killam. I am a director at the Human Development Center, which is at LSU Halpin, New Orleans. And I am the director of a program called Paycheck, Post-Secondary Apprenticeship for Youth.
Welcome back. And next we have Johnny Manela.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Johnny Manela. I am the director for the Program for Successful Employment at Baton Rouge Community College.
Welcome back, Mr. Manela. And next we have Lettie Goings. Now, I'm not sure if this is your first time here, but this is my first introduction to you. So welcome.
Thank you. Yes, this is my first time on this panel. I'm Lettie Goings. I'm a board certified behavior analyst at the McNeese Autism Program. Our program is part of the graduate psychology department. So we don't have a post-secondary education program through the university, but my program is through the autism program, so the Bridges program. So basically we provide ABA treatment for individuals, and I take that and kind of run with it when they're at that age of transitioning into post-secondary education.
Okay, thank you very much. And next we have Eamon Halpin.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I can't get my video working, but I'm probably the newbie here. I work at LSUA. I'm a professor of English, and also I'm involved in campus administration. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. But most relevant to this panel is that I'm chair of a campus committee charged with developing a program for students with developmental disabilities who've completed high school but are ineligible for regular college admission. So the reason we're doing this is we were approached from a couple of community members, parents of children who have developmental disabilities, and they sort of alerted us to the fact that there really isn't a post-secondary education option in central Louisiana for their children. So for the last year and a half, we've been kind of planning a program. We kind of agreed to undertake this. We've been preoccupied most recently with fundraising. I'm sure that's a topic that will be addressed during our discussion today. We've had some success, but we have a little ways to go. But I'm very glad to be part of the panel today.
Well, welcome. We're very happy to have you. So, you know, as Mr. Halpin was saying, you know, as he was talking, I thought this is really something that not too long ago was pretty much unheard of. So these programs are just really so interesting to have this opportunity for students to be able to attend college. And so we're going to go ahead and dive right in with our first question. Except that it says I'm being signed out. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm going to click this button and see. Okay. Sometimes Bambi and I are signed in on the same account. All right. So we'll dive in with the first question. Some of these questions will go around to each panelist, but all of them will not be addressed by each panelist in the interest of time. But you know, the ones that apply to most of the programs, we'll go ahead and ask each panelist to answer. So our first question is, can you tell us a little bit about your program, specifically identify your program, which you just did, talk about its purpose and the services that are provided to the students. Okay, so we'll start with Dr. Jurisich.
Yes, okay, so as I mentioned, I'm with UL Life at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and we are housed under the College of Education, so we're considered an academic program there. Our program is 2 years with the potential of being 4 years for students who qualify for advanced through some advanced qualifications. So what our mission is in very basic terms is we want our students to have the same college experience that traditional students have. And when I say experience, I don't just mean in what they participate in, but really what they come to college for, which is to become a contributing member of society, find a career path, grow into themselves. All of those same things is what our goal is for our students. And we do that through our university courses. We do that through internships on campus. We do that through life skills courses that really focus on some of those crucial life skills that all students need to know before entering the real world, not just our students. And then we put a large emphasis on community and campus involvement, because as many people know who have gone through college or university, that is where a lot of growth comes from too, not just in the classroom, but what they're doing outside of the classroom. And our students at all times are surrounded by college age peer mentors in everything they do. And so that also is, I consider that a service that greatly benefits their growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I could have used that life skills class. Dr. Beckers has joined us. So Dr. Beckers, if you'll introduce yourself and your program, and then you can answer, I'll repeat the question for you to answer.
Hi, sorry I was late. I was having internet issues. I'm Dr. Gerlinde Beckers. I'm an associate professor at Southeastern Louisiana University and the director of Lions Connected, which is a program similar to everyone else's, I'm sure, who've already introduced themselves. I also head up the Louisiana Alliance on Post-Secondary Inclusive Education, which everyone on this panel is very engaged in. So that is me. Sorry again that I was late. I live in the country, way out in the country.
Okay, so the question was, can you tell us a little bit about your program, specifically talk about its purpose and the services that are provided to the students?
Very similar to what Dr. Jurisich said, we offer a 2- and 4-year program. All of our students have up to this point enrolled in a 4-year program. We're starting our 6th year. We are a CTP, so we are certified. Therefore, our students are eligible for Pell funding if they are eligible, which is based on financial. Our program is very individualized. They choose their own courses as far as the courses they audit. We offer life skills. We offer social skills. We, prior to COVID and the pandemic, we are very engaged on campus. Their 2nd year, they participate in inclusive vocational opportunities, which is unpaid internships on campus. We work diligently with LRS to get continuation of services once they leave. Basically, their 4th year, we get employment, and then LRS helps them transition into community employment. We are in a rural setting. Most of our students come from the parishes that surround Hammond. And it's important that they're employed in their home-based communities because of transportation and for just the reason that that community piece is there.
All right, thank you very much. You've answered some of my other questions, but we'll move on to Sue. Sue, can you tell us about your program?
Sure. Is it okay if I share a screen?
Yes, you can. Let me make sure it's here.
You can share.
Okay.
I think you can hear me and then look at, do you see this? Is it on the right? I have 2 monitors, so can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
So Paycheck is not a certified transition program, and it's deliberate. We seek to be a little bit different than those, and we value those as they're wonderful programs. My program was born out of the WIOA legislation signed by President Obama in 2014, and then kind of came to fruition. So we've been doing this program since 2016, so nearly 6 years, and we've probably had close to 100 students involved in the program over that time. The program is a 3-semester, 12-month program. It is not necessarily at any particular post-secondary institution. We started our program at Delgado Community College, which is the local community college here in New Orleans. And now we've expanded. You can see we have the coursework can be taken at really anywhere, but we have put down the places where we have students that come from Tulane, Delgado, UNO, and Loyola. So it's a 3 semesters. So it's meant to be someone who's ready to kind of exit out of high school, who does not really want to continue on at university, or at least not probably get an associate's or a degree, a bachelor's degree, but who really is more interested in work, but kind of getting a few skills and some academics so that they can get better jobs. And so I have 2 transition specialists. I mean, our staff are housed at LSU Health. And so, the Delgado doesn't have the program like Johnny's program when he describes it. It's from the community college. We just use the campus. The students don't stay overnight. It's not a residential program, but we focus on internships in the community. So all our skills are in the community. They do 2 skills training internships, and then they're placed into employment at the end of the 12 months. The admission criteria is pretty easy. It goes along with WIOA, between 18 and 22, have a 504 plan or an IEP, and of course have LRS funding, because that funds our program. So I get fee for services for each student in my program, and we have to hit all those markers in order to get the funding that we need for our program and our staff.
Okay, thank you so much. You answered all the questions that I have. I know. So let's hear from Johnny.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Johnny Manela. I'm the director of the Psc Program at Baton Rouge Community College. So our program is a little bit similar, obviously, to the others that have already spoken, and Sue's as well. We are a community college, so our program is limited to 2 years. So our students do not live on campus like they would at UL and some of the other four-year schools. Our 2 years typically looks like this. Our first 2 semesters typically are life skills, where the students meet in one of our classrooms and learn a lot of different things, workplace readiness and so forth, obviously getting them ready for the workplace. We do not hire any of our students on campus. All of our students are go immediately right out into the workforce, out into the community, potentially as soon as the second semester, depending on how well they're doing. But typically the third and fourth semesters when they're out. We strive for paid employment, which is our hope, because obviously what young person doesn't want to earn a paycheck, but there are some that are not willing to do that, or maybe we start off on a probationary period and then we work up to that. But we focus more on kind of medium to larger size organizations, typically that are community owned, so that there's a lot of opportunities. For instance, we're working with Our Lady of the Lake Regional Medical Center, and we will be, if all goes well, according to COVID, we will be working with them very closely at not only the facilities here, but potentially in some of the other areas. But our main goal is to get them to be more independent, less dependent on mom and dad and others, and to have them really speak out and have a voice.
Okay, great. Next, we'll have Dr. Breaud.
Hi, Dr. Mary Breaud. I am at Nichols State University. Our program is Bridge to Independence. We are going into our 6th year. We are a CTP, like some of the other programs here. I'm going to try not to duplicate. The difference for Bridge to some of these programs is that we have a 2-track program. We have our certificate track for students with intellectual disabilities who are working on a certificate of completion of our program. They are working on job readiness, independent living skills. They do the internships on campus, audit classes. They do have the opportunity to live on campus and campus housing. Our other pathway is our degree pathway, and that is for students with autism who are accepted to Nichols State University from their high school transcripts with their ACT score, etc. They are working on a degree of their choice. So any degree that is offered at Nichols, 2-year or 4-year or graduate degree. These students come in for tutoring, social skills, organizational skills on a daily basis. We've had some really great success in our certificate program. Our first cohort, we have some students that have gainful employment, paid employment, and are working in the same job. They just celebrated their 3-year anniversary in that same job. And this summer, we have our first baccalaureate graduate. We've had 2 associate graduates. This summer is our first bachelor's, and we expect to have 3 or 4 more of our students completing their bachelor's in the fall. And we have 10 students coming in for our certificate program in the fall, and 41, so a total of 51 students for the fall.
That is amazing, Dr. Breaud.
Thank you.
Okay, Lettie, you want to go next?
Yeah, so I mentioned briefly previously, I might have given y'all too much information in my intro, but I mentioned that my program, the Bridges program, it's not affiliated through the university for university students. It is an actual targeted treatment group for social skills, and it's kind of evolved over the years. I think this is my 5th or 6th year running it, and we used to focus pretty heavily on social skills, but I noticed that the natural progression towards they're growing into young adults, social skills get a little more complex, so then you got to start working on job related social skills. And then are they going to get post-secondary education? Okay, so how are we going to prepare for that too? And the way my program is pretty different from these other programs you're talking about.
Did she cut out? Okay.
For ABA treatment. So I have kind of a time crunch that I'm working on. And I actually do have a patient on my caseload who is enrolled in a local community college right now. So that's exciting. And I'm kind of going through that journey kind of with them, you know, so it's pretty cool. Hopefully in the next, in the next few years, we'll McNeese could get a program very much similar to y'all's program. It would be very useful. I know that there's a lot of individuals in our community who could use that kind of support at this university level. My program was also really before COVID and before all the natural disasters we have endured. We went out in the community a lot as well. We would go on outings and we would practice the social skills that we would learn in the classroom setting, and we would put them to use out in the natural environment. So that was really fun and really cool. So that's kind of the overview of my Bridges program.
Okay, thank you so much. You cut out for about 10 seconds earlier, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying. Okay, so lastly, we have Dr. Halpin.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, our program is still in the planning stage, but we are hoping to launch it for fall 2022. It does have a name. It's called SPERO. It's an acronym, Special Program for the Enhancement of Resources and Opportunities for Young People with Developmental Disabilities. But SPERO also means I hope in Latin. We're planning for a 4-year program, and the program will share many of the features offered by the other 3 programs offered on 4-year college campuses south of the I-10. So the program will provide students with an opportunity to audit some appropriate freshman and sophomore level courses. There will also be life skills classes. Initially, we're going to base those on the program produced by the Council for Exceptional Children, but we hope to supplement that program with some ideas of our own. So students will have the opportunity to develop daily living skills, also social skills and interpersonal skills, and also we hope to help them acquire the vocational skills that will allow them ultimately to take up employment. There will be a student mentor aspect to the program. We will hire student mentors from the regular student body to provide support and assistance to the program students. Let's see. We hope to apply for the Ctp designation during the first year. We want to get the program up and running. We're planning to start with 4 students and then double up, the following, add 4 students each additional year for a maximum of 16, we think. As I said, we hope to apply for the Ctp designation during the first year, so that by the second year, students in the program will be able to use the Pell Grant to cover expenses. We do have a space. The university has been pretty supportive generally of this whole effort. We don't have a line in the budget yet. Maybe that'll come someday, but we do have a space, sort of a home, physical home for the program, which we're pretty excited about. I should mention as well, perhaps, that we've had a couple of open meetings where we've invited community members to come and indicate what they think the need is. And the initial meeting, it was back in December of 2019, actually. A small group attended, but a couple of those people actually became part of the committee. We invited them to join the committee that's been helping to develop the program. But August of last year, we had a second open meeting. We just did a press release, invited people from the community, parents, to come. And that second meeting, we filled an auditorium on the campus. We probably had about 70 people, moms and dads, grandparents, and some of the potential students themselves. So it was really after that meeting that we felt that this was something we should do and commit to. So that's our story.
Well, that's certainly interest, at least. Okay, so I think what I would like to do now is, you guys have mentioned the CTP quite a bit. Can somebody tell us what CTP is? And either of you can tell us, exactly what that means, and, why is it important to what you guys are doing?
I can do it if no one else wants to.
Okay.
CTP is a comprehensive transition program. It's an application that we've all had to submit with the U.S. Department of Education. And you basically have to outline what you're going to do. And a big part of it, I think it's like 75% of the time, has to be inclusive. And so you submit this application, which is pretty long, drawn out. And I know you have to submit evidence with syllabi and activities, and there's clock hours associated to it. And it goes through a process and either approved or not. And I know when we initially, Dr. Breaud can add in, it took, I know when I did it, and I did it like Dr. Halpin, we were in a program for a year, then we submitted. It took exactly 1 calendar year to get information back. Then they sent us the feedback and they gave us 3 weeks to amend the issues. And then we resubmitted, and then within 2 months we were approved. So that was our process. Now the CTP applications are going a lot quicker than they did originally. Something that recently has taken place is they're putting in accreditation standards. How that's going to impact us who are already CTP, I'm not sure, but kind of like with SACS and CAPE and all that, our universities go through accreditation. Now the programs are going to have accreditation standards.
Okay, thank you so much. So tied into that, and some of you have mentioned a few things, but I guess I wanted to be a little bit clear about the criteria. So what are the criteria? What are the criteria that students have to meet to be considered for your programs? And how do they apply for it? So let's start with Sue. And Sue, I know you said your program is not a CTP program.
Right. So, I think, as I said, when WIO was signed and we realized there would be this dedicated funding for transition for youth between 18 and 22 in the state, we began designing this program that would include some access to post-secondary education. So the students who were 18, who shouldn't be in high school anymore, needed to be out among people their own age and their peers. And then the focus is really employment. So that's why it's called Paycheck, right? I mean, we want the students and the parents to know that the 1 year will end in employment and a good placement. So, we've enjoyed for the last probably 3 years, when we had a larger group, we have 40 people in it this year and last year. So we're looking at a 75 to 80% placement rate. And, we do it all through Louisiana Rehab Services. So it's not a CTP because this wouldn't benefit these kids. These kids don't want to live away. They want to take some classes. They want to pretty quickly get into a paid internships. All our internships are paid. They're never on the campus. We never do classroom with them. They attend regular classes. They do it for credit. So they get a transcript. They can't apply that to an associate's degree because they haven't gone through, that application process. They're dually enrolled. So it's really for a different group of individuals who are looking for a different outcome. So it's not because I don't like CTPs. If I did it here, I'd have to have students here at LSU. So we wanted to use a community college. We also teach all the skills that most of the folks talked about, but we're in an urban area here. We have streetcars and we have buses that go nearly everywhere. So we get them from their house to the community college, from the community college to the community, from the community to their job, to their internships. And so we don't have the certification of the CTP program, and it's not for what we do. We do our monitor is Louisiana Rehabilitation Services and our outcomes. We can do the things we're supposed to do for Louisiana LRS, and then we have to know that we're getting the outcomes that we were hoping for, that the students will get into employment after going through each of these pre-ET services that are offered, and then be part of a college campus. So we get money from the schools for most of the kids. They pay the tuition for their students because they maintain their IEP. And so they pay the tuition and they pay for the books, supplies and fees, which can sometimes be as much as the course tuition. And I mean, so it's kind of joint funded. It really depends on a few partners. So it's not funded by Delgado at all. They are, I'm going to say, a silent partner, but we have like verbal agreements with them, but we've never even done an interagency because they don't give us any money. We just use their facilities like everybody else as regular students.
Thank you. I was on mute. So the criteria for your students to be considered for the program. Let's go to Lettie.
Okay, so the criteria is going to be, it's going to be a little bit different. So like I mentioned earlier, the Bridges program that I run, we bill insurance for. So the criteria basically would be, are they between the ages 14 and 20? Do they have a diagnosis of autism? Because we require a diagnosis. Insurance requires a diagnosis for them to get their treatment paid for. So do they have a diagnosis of autism and a prescription for services? And then, once we check off all those boxes, then we run our own assessments, social skills assessments, functional living skills assessments, and then we kind of gauge where they are. And then we just work off of a curriculum and we collect our data and we modify our programs and procedures as we monitor our data and our progress. And typically all of this occurs in the summer. So it's pretty intensive throughout the summer. And then we go from there.
Okay, thank you. Johnny?
Our program does have some specific requirements, as I think if you look at the other four-year schools, you'll kind of see the same thing, different age requirements. And I've got mine pulled up because I don't remember them all off the top of my head. But we look at students between the ages of 18 and 28. They need to have completed high school or GED or some sort of other training. They do have to be diagnosed, obviously, with autism or some form of intellectual disability. But we also want them to want this, because if the student is not really interested in this, which we have seen, and it's really not effective. The other thing that when we go through the interview process, is that we definitely make sure that the family support is there, whether that's mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever that may be. Because I have seen, and I'm sure everybody else has seen, that mom, dad, whoever, whatever that family figure is, can be hovering a little bit and is really surprised by what they can do. I've had many parents where I've had to just say, Mom, back off. And I'm a parent of a special needs child who finished our program. So I'm guilty of that just as much as the others. And parents are just shocked when they finish the program on how well they've done. And like, I never would have dreamed. And I said, I told you, you gotta let them loose. But a lot of it is based on them. They have to want it. We've had students that have applied, gone through the interview process, got to the first day and dropped out. They were not into it. Mom and dad were pushing them. So that's one of the things we really look for, is the desire from that student to be there. Because if it's not there, it's just not there. And sometimes we've had students that applied later and that desire was there and they've continued to be successful. Just have a recent success story. A young man finished our degree or our program in May, and he registered for 15 hours at BRCC, and he's going towards an automotive technology degree. So, there are great success stories, not only with us, but I'm sure with others. So that determination, I think, has to be a major factor.
That is awesome. I love to hear those success stories. And when you talk about just that they have to want it, that's, I think that is really important. I was a college advisor for a while, and it's interesting how students come in because, they want to be a doctor because their parents want them to be a doctor and they can't pass any of their biology classes. So I'm interested to know, what do you do when you have students who are a student who is not really interested, but their parent is pushing them? How do you deal with that?
Well, we do talk with a lot of the parents and try to get a better understanding. And then, of course, we sit down and really talk with the student and try to make some determination from there. And then we do offer them, if they've been accepted, then, maybe the fall is not the right thing right now. Maybe the spring is a better choice. And so we have done that where we said, let's wait a semester. It's only 4 or 5 months. The kid, the students are young and that kind of thing. So sometimes we do that. And then sometimes they, when that point rolls around, they're just not ready. This is just not what they want to do. So we do our best to try to help them and guide them. We have had students as well that this really wasn't the program for them. Either they were too high functioning. And I actually spoke with a parent about that yesterday and guided her to some other programs at BRCC. And then some who would probably struggle with the program that we're not really sure that would be terribly successful. And some we gear to other things like at LRS and that kind of thing. So we work closely with them as well, as I know the others do. But we try to do what's best for them.
Good. Yeah. So you offer other options and resources. Okay. So Dr. Breaud, I know you said your program, you have 2 different tracks. So can you tell us the criteria for those?
Sure. So our certificate program is for students who have an intellectual disability. That is part of the CTP, which some talked about before. That's a requirement. And then for our degree seeking students, the requirement is for them to be admitted first to the university. And then they have to produce a, evaluation for us identifying autism or ASD. So degree seeking, entrance into the university. Someone in the chat asked about, do they have to have TOPS? So it's the requirement of the university. However, admissions accept students. Doesn't necessarily have to be TOPS, but it just depends on what the university requires for admissions, because different universities require different things. But TOPS is not always a requirement. Someone also asked about Jumpstart. Jumpstart, to my knowledge, is more geared towards community college, but some students might have courses beyond Jumpstart that would meet college entrance requirements. So it's kind of a case-by-case basis. Back to the certificate program, students with intellectual disability, we have to document that from an evaluation. And then once that is done, typically parents bring those in or send those in, or individuals do. And after that, we will suggest a campus tour through admissions. And if the student displays some independent skills, some safety skills in unsupervised settings, then we will go ahead and schedule a interview with myself and the director to really meet and talk to the student. And like Johnny said, to make sure that this is what they want to do, because it is rigorous and they have to be up for it. And we have an application for each. Did I lose you?
Oh no, we're here.
Sorry, my screen went blank. But we do have an application for each of our programs. So that is found on our webpage, on the university webpage. So you can just go to Nichols and search Bridge to Independence. And at the bottom of that page are 2 applications, one for the certificate program, one for the degree program. But we say don't fill that out yet because it's lengthy. And so let's make sure that the student meets the criteria of intellectual disability for certificate program or autism for degree program, and we'll go from there step by step. We do accept 5 students in our certificate program every fall. It's a cohort, a 2-year cohort. And for our degree seeking students, we accept students as they are accepted to the university.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next, we will move to Dr. Beckers. criteria for your program, and how do they apply?
Okay, so we have pretty similar criteria, I think, across all of our programs. They apply online. We have already for next academic year, I think we have 10 applicants, and I think all of our programs agree. We get far more applicants than we can accept students. We accept 4 students a year. We try to keep 16 students maximum. Our criteria, 18 to 25 years of age, we do individual basis. Something we have learned, we cannot accept students with significant behavior problems. Minor behavior problems we can take, but significant we cannot. And we remind parents that we are a gift on our college campus and that we cannot have students who are, I hate to say the word, but runners, students who are non-compliant, students who show any type of aggressive behavior. So that's a big criteria. Independence as far as basic self-help, eating, toileting, those types of skills, basics, functional reading, math, we look at that. And I think as the other program stated, a desire to want to be on a college campus. We do have parents who want their students to be in a program when the students do not want to be in the program. So once the application deadline passes, we set up interviews. We interview all the students. We have certain questions with the scoring criteria, and this is stuff we've learned over our 5 years of doing this. And then we have 2 of our mentors, we do a male and a female, take the student on a campus tour, partly to show them the campus, but also to see how the applicants interact with peer mentors. Are they compliant? Are they interactive? Do they communicate? That type of thing. And a lot of times we learn that the students are a lot more at ease with the peers than they are during the interview process. And then when the student is gone, we talk with the parents. And then they come back and we basically go from there. And then, as unfortunate it is, we turn away a lot of students because we just don't have the room to have them in our program, and that's based on funding.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Halpin?
The audience for our program will be students between the ages of 18 and 28 who, 1, have an identified developmental or intellectual disability, 2, who have completed high school, either with the high school diploma or career diploma, certificate of achievement or some equivalent, and who are ineligible for regular college admission. So initially the students will submit an online application, and then once we review the online applications, we will conduct interviews, one-on-one interviews with those students who meet the basic criteria. Another criteria is actually, Gerlinde mentioned it, that students not have a long-standing record of disruptive behavior. That is an important one. But we will interview the students who meet the basic criteria, and we are also thinking about, perhaps interviewing the parents as well. And I think our worry in all of this is, what do we tell the students who we can't admit? We've not started our program, so I don't know how that works. That must be quite difficult, I think, having to turn students away and disappoint them. So I'd be interested to hear how that aspect of the admission process is handled.
Okay. And then last but not least, Dr. Jurisich.
Yes. So very similar admission, as the other universities and college programs. When we do our application process, there is about a 30-page application. So like Dr. Breaud said, it's pretty intense. We really, and this year it'll be October 16th. So if you're interested, we do a preview day that we really encourage people to attend prior to applying. Just like Dr. Breaud said, so they know it's a place that they want to apply to. And that preview day is our entire university, but then when they break up into colleges and programs, that's when they come to the UL Life program for a couple hours. And we talk to the parents, guardians, and students, and then we separate them. It's a great day to kind of get a preview of the program and of the university as well. And then from the application process, we interview most people who apply. You know, there are some that if we see like significant behavior, you know, in the references, things like that, you know, we might not interview those, but anyone who meets those basic criteria, the age, the intellectual disability, the completion of a high school program, Dr. Halpin said, you know, not eligible for a degree seeking program, and you know, behavior, they are interviewed. And then during the interview process, we interview parents, guardians, and students. We separate them. So we, you know, talk to everyone in the beginning, but then we talk to parents, guardians, and the student goes and shadows a class. And during that shadow, they're being observed by our graduate assistants just to see, you know, how they do. We expect students to be nervous. We expect them to, you know, not necessarily be totally themselves, but you know, it's a good snapshot of you know, how the student will adapt to new people, new surroundings, because on a college campus, you know, that's common. And then we talk to the student individually, and I find that that's really usually a great time for us to figure out the student's motives, because agreed with everyone else that it is so important that the student wants to be there. And, you know, the wonderful thing about so many of our students is they're honest. So, you know, we've had students say, I don't really want to go to college, but, you know, my mom wants me to, or my grandmother wants me to, or my dad wants me to. So that, you know, plays a factor into our decision. And then from there, you know, we do admissions, we send out our acceptance letters. We typically have about a 25% acceptance rate. So same thing, that's why we love to see more programs in the state. Usually about 6 to 8 students each year. We're kind of in the process of growing our program. We currently have 22 for this fall, and it's looking like our sweet spot's going to be somewhere between 26 and 32 total, as we, you know, continue to grow our resources. And, you know, to kind of answer Dr. Halpin's question, as far as, you know, how we tell people no, I always say it's the worst part of the job, because we want there to be a spot for everyone. And, you know, we do so. For some of our students, we really encourage reapplication. You know, maybe they're really young, maybe they were so close. And we send out an official letter, but I typically reach out to those parents and guardians specifically and say, you know, these are some things we observed during the interview process. These are some things we would love to see them continue to build and work on, you know, to try to give that encouragement. We're also always, you know, open to helping find other resources. I think Johnny mentioned that, you know, this one might not be the right fit, just like UL is not necessarily the right fit for every college student. You know, while each program has a lot of similarities, while all the programs have a lot of similarities, each one is unique. And there's a right fit for everybody. It's definitely not one size fits all for sure. So we, you know, we encourage people to find, you know, what fits them. And like I said, we do give input and guidance as far as, you know, what are things that they could work on, improve upon, et cetera. And our admissions is typically, our application will be live, hopefully Friday, but August 1st. And then we are going to start interviews in November, probably through January. And we try to follow the same schedule as the university, with our admissions being shared, our acceptances being shared by, at the latest, the end of March.
Some of these application processes are intense, 30 pages. But that's good, you know, for making sure that it's something that they want to do, and you all have all the information you need to be able to serve the populations that you serve. So I've heard you all talk about just kind of in bits and pieces about funding, and some of you have mentioned financial aid or Pell Grant. Can we briefly run through each program and talk about how it's funded, and do students pay tuition, and if they're eligible for financial aid? All right, so we'll start with Sue. I know your program is different. I haven't figured out exactly everything yet. So we'll just start with you and tell us how it goes.
All right, so funding, I'll stay on that topic. So the funding for my program or for the students, either the school pays, the schools refer to us and LRS refers to us. So if the school refers to us and the person can be either re-enrolled or still has some time on that IEP, then the school system pays for their coursework and pays for their book supplies and fees. And so we feed them, they never go back to the school, but we keep their IEP active and we provide attendance and progress reports and records to the school. If the student is referred directly from LRS, so it's a student that finished, they either went through the Jump Start or the April Done, diploma, and then, or we have some people who got a diploma, made their way to Louisiana Rehab Services, wanted to go to a university or a community college and may have applied, and then they can come in the program and we do the same services. So Louisiana Rehab Services will pay for their tuition, their books, fees, and supplies, unless their parents make, and it's in the vicinity of, it depends on the number of people in a household, above $150,000 a year. So if that happens, then the student has to, of course, come up with the money and they can apply, for FAFSA and try to, go through that process. So, we don't have one entry into the program. It comes all over. So I don't have to say no hardly ever. I can take a lot of kids and I can always hire more staff to provide the supports that we have. So that's a luxury I have. So anyway, that's the funding. It's really taken care of. We try to unburden the parents and even the stakeholder, but they're taking regular classes at a regular post-secondary education institution. And so, I mean, there's no one answer there.
So you're not a program where it's like, oh, we take about 5 students a semester. It's
We take about 30. We've taken, I have right now just under 40. I have 39 students. I have 20 new entries for the fall. A couple entered in the summer. So we'll be going full tilt on August 9th around that time with the community college and the other universities. And then we have a huge cohort, like 20 students that are doing their internships and are being placed, because we probably wouldn't have had as many if it wasn't for that darn COVID that we all keep talking about. But they weren't allowed to get out. Although I did 14 apprenticeships in essential worker positions for students who wanted to go to work as the pandemic was starting to, it looked like there was light at the end of the tunnel. There were vaccines coming and things. So yeah, we kind of have a lot of things going on at once, a lot of plates in the air. And it's individualized, like we never have a classroom setting. We all do one-on-one supports. So, and we don't have an office. My staff have an office here at the university, but they don't have any place at the community college or at Loyola, or they just go to the Student Life Center. That's where they meet up and they do all their meetings. They arrange them through schedules.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Lettie, I know you said that you all bill insurance. Is that pretty much the gist of how payment happens?
Yeah, so we bill insurance for the service that we provide. Now, I will say we're going to start looking into some grants and sponsorships and stuff like that, because what I have found in my several years of working with teens and young adults on the spectrum, it gets harder to get insurance coverage for social skills and independent living skills, as some insurance companies like to say that those things aren't medically necessary. So they sometimes are not as likely to accept the request for authorization, which leaves us in a pickle with, oh, okay, well, now I have this 17-year-old who could really benefit from the social skills group and like really flourish. But now we got to figure out how to pay for it. And when you start talking about out-of-pocket costs, that really adds up. So for us, yes, it's a little bit different. We do bill insurance, but I think we're going to have to start looking more towards some funding from out in the community, maybe some sponsorships and stuff like that, just to make the program a little more accessible for everyone.
All right, so Johnny, Mr. Manela.
Yeah, so in the very end of last year, we also received our designation of CTP. I've had to put that off a little bit due to funding and staff sizing and a variety of other things. At this moment, the majority of our students are eligible for LRS, or Louisiana Rehabilitation Services. So if my memory serves me correctly, last semester about 77% of our students qualified due to various factors, and then the rest were all private pay. And I know in the fall, we have 7 private pay students. The rest will be all RS. We'll have a total of 34, if my memory serves me correctly. So that'll be the largest of private pay. As our program is getting more notoriety and expanding and so forth, we are getting more and more students that are eligible for LRS due to increases of family size and income levels and so forth. So that's where the majority of our funding comes from. I, like the others, are applying for grants and so forth, for scholarships, for supplies, for whatever. And then we do get a little tiny bit of funding from the college to kind of help us through. But I had also had a meeting with Senator Foyle last week, and Florida has done some interesting things. And I passed on that information to him. So he's going to be looking into that. That will not only help us, but help all of us potentially. And so he's looking into that to see if that could be something that could help us in the future. But again, for us, mostly LRS and private pay for now.
Okay. I wish we can get into what Foyle is working on, but we don't have, but that might be a conversation for later. Dr. Breaud?
So funding for our program is basically for tuition and fees. And we do have a bridge fee that is additional. So students pay for the number of course hours if they are auditing courses in our certificate program, or if they are taking traditional courses in a degree program. So it depends on the number of course credits, as every university, I think, does that. So tuition and fees. Then there is a bridge fee of $2,055 per semester that we collect. That pretty much just pays for our staff. And students pay housing, the regular housing costs when they live on campus. We do have preferential housing placement for our students. We do place them in the different dorms on campus. They pay regular meal plans. And of course, if they are eligible for Pell through the CTP, that is a component of CTP. That's why CTP is so important, that students are able to tap into Pell. For our degree students, if they have TOPS, then that is something, scholarships also. Many of our students come with large scholarships. A lot of those are tied to ACT. And like Johnny said, LRS is a huge help to many, many of our students. And we do have a foundation account, which we do a lot of fundraising. That I've learned a lot about fundraising since I've been with Bridge. So we do a lot of that too. But it's basically all of the fees, tuition and fees that you find on the university website, plus the additional Bridge fee.
So Dr. Beckers.
Okay, so our Alliance Connected students pay right now a $3,000 program fee per semester. They're not charged any other fees. They're required to purchase their lunch, and they usually put we have a meal plan, which most universities do, and they put it on their ID cards. With their program fee, we have a textbook rental, so that includes all their textbook rental fees. If there are specific fees related to courses, like if they take a ceramic class, the parents are responsible for those types of consumable materials. If there's severe hardship, again, we work with a lot of rural areas and high poverty, we have paid for items, or the instructors of the courses have contributed materials if it's a big problem. The majority of our students are full Pell paying, and if they do not have LRS, that application process to get the parents involved, to get the students eligible for LRS, so that will help offset some of the fees if they need additional funding. And they actually, which I learned this, transportation, they will help the parent, that will help with transportation to and from the program. We do not have dorm or residential part in our program, and we don't foresee that happening in the near future because Southeastern is known as a commuter college, and we're kind of going along those same lines as far as our program. The students, like I said, majority are full Pell, which is why our CTP is critical, and the rest of them are typically full pay. As in our traditional Southeastern students, if the parents can't, if they are full pay, they can get on a payment plan just like traditional students. I think they pay a certain percent up front and then make a monthly payment. So that's how we function financially. And well, financially, we struggle, I think, as the other programs do. I have a foundations account. We do a lot of fundraising, and we actually raised enough money to start an endowment, which is protected money now. And hopefully over time it'll grow. Long term, it's going to be great, but short term, we struggle, year to year, like I believe the rest of our programs do, to keep the programs going.
Dr. Halpin, I know y'all are in progress.
Well, we plan to charge a semester program fee. It'll be somewhere between $3,000 and $3,500. As I mentioned earlier, we hope to, we plan to apply for the federal designation, the Ctp designation, and that would allow students and their parents to, to pay for that fee through the Pell Grant money. We're kind of anticipating that by year 4 of the program, the revenue generated from the program fee would cover most, but probably not all of our expenses. Our difficulty over the last year has been getting startup funds, because before we even begin the program, we're going to have to hire somebody to help us run it, and we're going to have to, we also plan to hire student mentors. So there's that initial outlay of money. And last year I submitted, it was kind of during the COVID year, I submitted about 3 grant applications, and none of them were successful. I think in part that was because there were so many other needs during 2020, COVID related needs. So at the end of last year, we started our own fundraising campaign. We set up a giving option we have an LSUA foundation, and they have a website. We put a giving option on the website. We did some interviews, radio and TV interviews. Actually, Bambi came up to see us, and we had a little reception. So she helped us get the word out. And that effort raised about $50,000, or has raised that amount so far. But this year I was more successful with the grant applications. We submitted one to Blue Cross Blue Shield Louisiana Foundation, and they awarded us $126,000. So that's going to allow us to start. We're kind of confident now that we can actually launch the program in fall of 2022. And I have a few other grant applications in the works. And also our congressional representative, Julia Letlow, has kind of expressed an interest in what we're doing. She visited our campus recently, and she was very interested in this program that we're developing. And I think she may help us secure some monies. So I think we were a little worried. We were quite worried last year, but we feel more confident now. And I think we've received a lot of support from the community, for the development of the program. So we're in a better place, we think.
Good. I hope the money starts flowing in.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Jurisich.
Is it okay if I share my screen really fast? Okay. I was just thought that might be easier. So this is kind of an example cost breakdown for us. It's the same as any UL Lafayette student. It's based on the number of hours the student registers for. So we don't have an additional fee, but our life skills classes do count towards their hours. Students start with 12 hours, and then after their first semester are eligible for 15. Obviously, this can change and usually does based on the increases. I like to joke and say increases or decreases. However, tuition doesn't ever seem to decrease. You know, usually it's a slight change. Books, that can be anywhere from $100 to $300 or free. A lot of our instructors and professors for all students are getting creative and how to make it more affordable. And then our meal plans, this is the cost per semester. However, meal plans are completely optional for non-residential students, so students who aren't living on campus. And many of our students, even the ones, you know, who are on campus for a full day, they bring their own lunch. They may go pick something up some days. And then our residential housing, it's the same cost as other students, and can range from $3,300 for shared suites to $4,800 for private suites. So there's no additional mentor fees, anything like that, or program fee. It is just all encompassed in that tuition and fees that the university, you know, charges. And we are very lucky that, you know, we have an administration that holds a lot of value in the program. And so they definitely help us financially cover, you know, we don't quite break even, but you know, that is our goal, as the other said, is to be completely, you know, self-sufficient between tuition and, you know, money from foundations, grants, things like that. And like Gerlinde said, you know, our goal is an endowment in our foundation, so it can stay and be permanent and last forever.
Thank you very much to all of you for answering that question. And I know if parents or students have more questions about that, then they can look for that information on your websites, which
Sorry, and I forgot to say, our students the same are eligible for Pell Grants. Many of our students receive that, and then many of our students also receive LRS assistance. So I did want to mention that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just saying that, you know, I know it's going to be hard to take in all this information and retain it, but this information probably is all available on your websites. Yes, okay. So now I want to get into just a little bit more specifically, ask a few questions about some of your programs. And so I want to start with Dr. Breaud. Dr. Breaud, what jobs are the graduates of the Bridge to Independence program employed in currently? What jobs are the graduates employed in?
For our certificate program graduates, like I said earlier, we have some that graduated in our very first cohort that are working in excess of 3 years at the same job. Those are governmental jobs, the clerk of court's office, the district attorney's office. We have had a student to work for the local police office. We have students who have been from away that loved the area and they moved to the area from where they were living previously in high school. So they've relocated and are living in apartments or houses. We have one student that actually bought a home and is living independently in her home, close enough to her job where she can walk to work. We have other students that do return to their hometowns, working in daycare centers. We have one student who is working in a company that rents out small equipment. So it's a variety of things, but many of our students, you know, do have that gainful employment, and depending, some are 20 hours a week, some are 15, some are 30. We do have some students that are actually working a 40-hour week in daycares. So it's a variety of different things that go along with the internships that they complete on campus. And we're fortunate to have a daycare on campus, so they are able to get that experience if that's in their interest area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Manela,
Yeah, so some of the employers that we currently have students working with, one of our largest ones is Vivid Ink and Graphics. And I typically do a lot of networking, to find different places. Working on an initiative with Associated Grocers. I had talked about earlier the Lake Hospital, working with them as well. Hopefully COVID doesn't ruin that for us. I did have a student who was very interested in working with a photographer. And I just kind of rolled my eyes to myself and thought that's going to be almost impossible. But we actually, through networking and knowing somebody, found a photographer that does a lot of mentoring. This is an unpaid internship. The student was thrilled to death. He's already doing a lot of photography on his own, but was very interested in learning from a professional photographer. So they have begun working together, doing weddings and so forth. So he's really interested in that. I mentioned Associated Grocers. We have several students that are working in a variety of those, and I'm working with their HR, their legal and marketing people to kind of broaden that out so that we can kind of look at that. YMCA is somebody that we're in discussion with, some of the local different YMCAs. And I also have been trying to make up some appointments with some of our largest law firms here in the area. And just kind of building from there. I don't do a lot of cold calling because I found that just doesn't help. But a lot of people have been touched in some form or fashion by special needs. I was able to connect with somebody whose son or daughter has an application for the spring, and then talking, come to find out where she works, which is someplace I've been trying to find my way in. So it's just a lot of different places. You just never know, where they may be. And so we have a lot of students. COVID kind of hurt a lot of us, as I'm sure everybody else. A lot of students lost their jobs, my son being one of them. And so we tried to find jobs for them. Some we were successful at, some were not. So I'm concerned about the uptick in COVID at this point, as far as what our availability will be for jobs in the coming fall. But we continue to plug along.
Yeah, so much uncertainty with COVID. Dr. Beckers, what type of on-campus vocational opportunities do your students participate in? And how are those opportunities selected? You're still on mute.
We do a needs inventory with our students basically on what they want to do. Sometimes that's a trial and error, as we know in life. So once we start a job, we make our students stay in that job for that academic year. But then if we will reassess for a different job for the next year, we just don't want to leave our partners in a bad situation. So on campus, we have a Head Start program. So we utilize Head Start, and we also have a lab school. So we utilize the kindergarten. So our students who are interested in early childhood can do like the PK3 piece as well as the kindergarten piece. We have a rental bookstore and we have a retail bookstore. So if that merchandising is an area of interest, they can do that. Our students have worked, we had one student who did all of her on campus in our health unit on campus, and then she transitioned to employment in her community in a doctor's office. So all the years she was with us, she got the skills she needed. And by the time she left us, she was 100% independent on doing patient intake, which is what we strive to do. We have our newspaper, our student newspaper, our students who are interested in journalism, they've done their IVO with the newspaper. Coaching, we have a lot of our students are interested in coaching, and we have phenomenal coaches who will take our students and just nurture them. And that's been a really good experience. So pretty much whatever is opportunities we have on campus that align with the interest of our students in preparing them for employment once they leave us.
Good. All right, Dr. Jurisich. So what jobs are you preparing your students for after graduation? And are there some opportunities that they do as like internships as some of the other programs talked about?
Yes, exactly as the others said, we definitely don't have a one size fits all. We look at each student and what their goals are. I will say, sometimes with our students, there is a bit of readjusting we have to do in thinking when we have a student who may come in and say, well, I want to be a doctor. We always want to make sure our students are set up for goals for sure and strive towards goals, but we also want to make sure they're set up for success. So we do a lot in the first semester, first year of getting down to what they want to do and really the why. Why do they want to, if a student says, well, I want to be a doctor or a nurse, and maybe that's not necessarily something that's quite attainable at this point in their life. Okay, well, why? What about that appeals to you? And then from there, with the student, I say we don't want to change their mind. We just readjust. We say, okay, well, let's look at all of those things, all the opportunities that are available for someone who wants to help people, something of that sort. And we do an internship starting their second year. And we try to, we're currently slowly expanding to on and off campus internships. That was, I hate to be a broken record, but it was supposed to happen last year and it obviously did not with COVID. However, this fall, we should have a couple who are doing off-campus internships with partners in the community. And we hope that to expand because right now, while we do have a lot of opportunities, we are limited in some ways. If a student wants to work in a vet's office, UL does not necessarily have veterinary, opportunities on campus. So we want to make sure we place them somewhere that, they get that direct experience. However, if we are in a situation where there's not a perfect fit, we try to look for a placement on campus that has transferable skills. So are they going to be working on something or working in an area where when they put that on a resume, it is applicable to different jobs, especially for students who maybe don't know what they want to do. That's pretty common for a lot of college students. I mean, it's common for a lot of adults. So we want to make sure that the jobs and internships that they have, that are primarily on campus to have transferable skills. A lot of our students currently in the next year, we'll have students in the dining services doing food prep, the bookstores on campus in different areas, rec sports in different areas. We have a few sports managers, the daycare center. We have a student going to the library to work in the Louisiana history section. And, we hope to get him in the Science Museum or, one of the museums in Lafayette. And our internships are paid or unpaid. It just depends on the placement. So like a student who works in the daycare center, their interns are not paid in general across, campus. So those students are not paid. However, a student who works in rec sports, their student workers are paid. Therefore, our students are paid as well. So really, it just depends on the placement and what their protocol is, for all students.
Very good, thank you. It seems like the opportunities are, they're out there. They just need an opportunity to be able to explore it and be given a chance to be trained. And so these are all really, really great programs that you have going on. I think it probably opens up a lot of eyes to, to what can happen if people just are open to allowing students to be who they want to be. So we are running a little bit low on time. So I wanted to give everybody maybe a last word. Maybe I didn't ask a question that would give you an opportunity to talk about something you really wanted to share about your program. And then we can answer some of the questions that were in chat. So if anybody has anything else they'd like to share that they didn't have an opportunity to talk about, maybe you can have a minute to do that, and then we can address some questions. Was there anything else anybody want, Dr. Beckers?
I would like to just, I kind of mentioned it briefly before, and all the people on this panel are part of, it's LAPI, Louisiana Alliance on Post-Secondary Education. And we, I believe, I'm speaking for the people here, are very passionate about our programs and starting new programs across our state. And we're working hard we have next steps. Our next step is working with our legislator to try to get the funding that Florida has for their post-secondary programs on 2- and 4-year campuses. And I think that's something for the viewers to know, to get involved, to reach out to their alum, to know that in order for these types of programs to grow, it takes all of us. And LaPi is actually funded through the Developmental Disabilities Council. And I value the members on this panel because I think together, collectively, we're going to make a difference in our state. So again, just reach out to your legislators, to your alum, to your neighbor to say, hey, I want this at my school. I want this for my kid. I want this for my neighbor's kid. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Was there any other thing anybody want an opportunity to share before we go to questions?
Well, I would like to share one thing, Melanie, and that is, you know, we kind of jumped into this without knowing anything about it, other than what the parents were telling us. But I have really, I wanted to just say that I appreciate the support our program has received already from the directors of the other programs in the state. You know, we really feel encouraged by Gerlinde and Carolyn and Mary, especially. They offer the programs on four-year college campuses, and that has really kind of sustained us. And I just want to thank them for that.
Thank you. All right, let's look at the questions. Let's see what we have. Here we are. There's a lot of comments in here. And I'm sure some of you, I saw that some of you were answering some of the questions as we went. So I'll try not to duplicate that. What is the level of functionality looked at or required for a potential student? I think y'all talked about that. Also, what is the average age of these students? I heard a lot of you say 18, but what is the average age of the students in these programs?
I'll chime in there. Our certificate program written in our CTP is for our students to be aged 18 to 28. Our degree program can be students of any age. And I think one thing to really hone in on is that all of us that have a CTP, we have a written plan. And so that is what we have to live by, what we planned for and what we were allocated. So, you know, sometimes there are students that don't qualify or fall within the parameters of our program, and we do refer them to other places, but it's what we wrote into our programs that we have to stand by, and each one of our programs wrote it a little differently. So that, and if you go to Think College, just Google Think College, and all of our programs are there, and you'll see if we are a CTP or not, and you'll see all of the programs throughout the country. So I know when we were writing our program proposal, that was very helpful to us to see the different options out there.
Okay.
For us, and just kind of glancing at the applications and so forth, I mean, we're probably looking 2021-ish, somewhere in that general range. We do have a few on the near 28, but probably more college age students.
So that's maybe the consensus. Okay. I have another question here that a few of you already answered, so I'll give the other panelists an opportunity to answer it. Besides the negative public attitudes, what have been the major barriers for DD students to enter and be successful in post-secondary education? And has post-secondary education prepared them well? And where does pre-eds fit in? I don't know if all that's like lumped together or those are three completely separate questions. Who would like to answer that about the barriers to successful post-secondary ed?
I'll chime in. I kind of typed something up a little bit, but just to expand on that, you know, I think that because these programs are so new, and I always say, you know, universities and colleges in a lot of ways, they think in black and white, and these programs are like rainbow, purple, neon colored. We definitely don't necessarily fit in the mold that is there a lot of times for college programs on university and college campuses. That to me has been like the biggest barrier for our students is sometimes things take time. So when a student or a parent and guardian comes to us and says, I'd really like my student to have, this internship, and we agree, that would be a great internship, or we really want them to have access to this on campus. It isn't, we usually don't get a no from the university or from whoever's in charge of that. It just might take a minute for us to figure out how to make it work for all parties involved. So it's a lot of times the biggest barrier is logistics and having patience while we figure that out. And I think that post-secondary, or secondary schools, do a wonderful job preparing students. That's why we see such a high number of applicants. The biggest thing is, self-advocacy. And I know Lettie talked about that in her research, having the student really be able to advocate for themselves in situations where they are truly, independent and having to, speak up for themselves about the supports they need or anything like that. And we've seen a shift in that. We've seen students come in with, more self-advocacy skills than our earlier students. And I think it is because K through 12 teachers and supervisors and parents and families are thinking about college programs earlier. So they're starting to think about what happens when my student lives by themselves, more so than they were 5 years ago, because these programs were so few and far between.
Okay, thank you. Sue, you had your hand raised.
Well, to the part of the question that related to pre-eds, I actually think that some of these programs could actually think about being a pre-eds, like a vendor for LRS. I know Johnny does that in his program. And my program is based on that. It has the post-secondary academics as well, but a lot of those work-based learning, the counseling on enrollment, the job exploration, the things that are covered in the pre-eds, the stated pre-ed services that LRS provides, you could do that with some other staff and add to the complement. They'd be funded. So that's something to think about, because there's definitely independent living skills and instruction and self-advocacy. Those are two that you all are doing, and some of the others you're definitely doing with counseling on post-secondary ed. So that would actually bring in some funding to your programs. I mean, it completely funds my program. So there's no reason why you couldn't add it on. It would just be a complement to what you're doing.
And Dr. Beckers, Bambi asked the question, are there any schools in North Louisiana considering having programs such as these?
Right now, we're working with Grambling State University. Dr. Danielle Williams is very active. And then UL at Monroe, Dr. Anita Sharman is very interested and wanting to start a program. So we're working diligently with them and on their campuses to try to get these programs started. As Dr. Halpin said, it's not always an easy task. So it takes a lot of work and persuading. And it's kind of added on to the question Dr. Jurisich answered. I think a lot of it is the unknown that prohibits programs. It's not, they don't want to, they just don't know. And it takes us to advocate what a post-secondary program is and what's involved in our programs. So just kind of wanted to add that little piece to it as well.
All right, thank you so much for that. So we have about 2 minutes left. So I just want to thank you all again. I hope that the desire for these programs catch on for the rest of the state and across the nation. And if there are no more final comments, that concludes this session. It looks like Bambi may want to say something.
I want to say thank you guys. I appreciate your work, and we really appreciate everything that you're doing for our students across the state. And we're committed to help your programs grow and supporting the good work that you're doing. So thank you guys so much. And for all the attendees, we have our next session at 2:00 in 30 minutes. So stay tuned for another great session.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.